Good morning. And before I say anything else, I need you to stop whatever you're doing because what I'm about to share with you in the next few minutes could completely change the way you think about aging. Most people assume that reaching your 70s and 80s means slowing down, accepting limitations, and quietly watching your world get smaller. But I'm here to tell you today that assumption is dead wrong, and the medical establishment has been far too slow to correct it. My name is Dr. kenD Barry, and after more than 3 decades working as a physician specializing in geriatric health and longevity medicine, I have sat across from thousands of patients in their 70s and 80s, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that there is a group of older adults out there, a rare, remarkable group, who are defying everything we thought we knew about what aging looks like. A landmark study published by the Mayo Clinic followed adults between the ages of 70 and 85 over a 12-year period and found that only 11% of them maintained what researchers called functional independence across all major health domains. 11%. That means nearly 9 out of 10 people in that age range were struggling in at least one critical area of their physical or cognitive health. But that 11%, those people were thriving. And here is the most important thing I want you to hear today. The things that separated them from everyone else were not genetic miracles. They were specific, measurable abilities that you can assess and in many cases improve starting today. Now I'm going to count down 8 of those abilities from 8 all the way to number 1. And I promise you, by the time we get to number 1, you are going to be genuinely shocked. Most people have never heard this discussed in these terms before. And it is arguably the single most powerful predictor of longevity that exists in the medical literature. So make sure you stay with me all the way to the end. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something personally. Drop a comment below and tell me your age and which of these 8 things you feel strongest in right now. I read every single comment on this channel, and your answer genuinely matters to me because this community is what drives the work I do every single day. Now let's get into it. Number 8 on our list is the ability to walk continuously for 30 minutes without stopping, without holding on to anything, and without significant pain. Now I know that might sound simple, maybe even obvious, but here is what most people do not realize. Walking is not just exercise. For the aging body, sustained walking is a full system diagnostic. A study from the University of Pittsburgh found that walking speed alone predicted 10-year survival rates in adults over 65 with stunning accuracy. More accurately, in fact, than many traditional clinical tests. If you can maintain a pace of at least 2.5 miles per hour for 30 consecutive minutes, you are signaling that your cardiovascular system, your musculoskeletal system, your neurological coordination, and your pulmonary function are all working together efficiently. Here's why this becomes so critical after 70. As we age, something called mitochondrial efficiency begins to decline. And let me explain what that means in plain language. Think of your mitochondria like tiny power plants inside every cell in your body. When you are young, those power plants run clean and hot. But after 70, research from Harvard Medical School shows that mitochondrial function can decline by as much as 40%, which means your muscles are literally getting less energy from the same amount of oxygen. Walking, particularly sustained rhythmic walking, is one of the few activities that actively stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, which is the creation of new mitochondria. You are literally rebuilding your cellular power plants one step at a time. I had a patient named Margaret, 74 years old, from Scottsdale, Arizona. When she came to see me, she could barely make it from her car to my office without needing to sit down. Within 4 months of a structured daily walking program, starting at just 5 minutes and building gradually, she was walking 40 minutes a day. Her blood pressure dropped 14 points, her fasting glucose normalized, and she told me she felt, and I quote, like someone switched the lights back on. If you can walk 30 minutes today, you are already ahead of most people your age. If you cannot yet, that is your starting point. Number 7 is the ability to sleep between 6 and 8 hours without significant pharmaceutical assistance and to wake feeling genuinely restored. Sleep, particularly after age 70, is not a luxury. It is a biological imperative, and the research is staggering. A study published in the journal Nature Aging found that consistently poor sleep in adults over 65 was associated with a 68% increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease over a 7-year follow-up period. 68%. And the reason comes down to something called the glymphatic system, which is essentially your brain's overnight cleaning crew. While you sleep deeply, cerebrospinal fluid flushes through your brain tissue, clearing out metabolic waste products, including amyloid beta, the protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. If your sleep is fragmented or chemically suppressed, that cleaning crew never gets to finish the job. The reason quality sleep becomes harder with age relates to declining melatonin production and a reduction in slow-wave sleep. That is the deepest, most restorative stage of the sleep cycle. After 75, research from the University of California, Berkeley shows that slow-wave sleep can be reduced by as much as 70% compared to young adulthood. But here is what separates the rare gems I mentioned earlier. They protect their sleep environments and their sleep schedule with fierce consistency. They keep the room cool. They limit screen exposure after 8 o'clock in the evening. And they treat their bedtime the way an athlete treats training. If you are sleeping well and waking restored without relying on heavy sedatives, you are doing something truly extraordinary. Number 6 is the ability to maintain your balance while standing on one leg for at least 10 seconds with your eyes open. This one sounds almost playful, but I need you to take it very seriously. A study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2022 followed over 1,700 adults between the ages of 51 and 75 and found that the inability to balance on one leg for 10 seconds was associated with an 84% higher risk of death from any cause over a 7-year follow-up period. 84%. That number stopped the medical community in its tracks. Balance is controlled by a triumvirate of systems in your body. Your vestibular system in the inner ear, your proprioceptive system, which gives your body its sense of position in space, and your visual system. After age 70, all three begin to lose coordination with each other, and the result is an increased fall risk that many doctors dramatically underestimate. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in adults over 65 in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. But here is what the research also shows. Balance is highly trainable at any age. Tai Chi, single-leg standing exercises, and even yoga have been shown by researchers at Oregon Research Institute to reduce fall risk by up to 47% in seniors who train consistently. Try it right now. Stand near a wall for safety. Lift one foot and count. If you hit 10 seconds, you are in exceptional company. Number 5 is the ability to engage in and sustain meaningful social connection. Not just surface-level interaction, but genuine emotional reciprocal relationships. I know this one might surprise you on a list that is otherwise fairly physical, but the science here is more powerful than almost anything we discuss in clinical medicine. A landmark meta-analysis from Brigham Young University, which reviewed data from over 3 million adults across 148 studies, concluded that social isolation carries the same mortality risk as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Let that sink in for a moment. Loneliness is as dangerous as smoking. For aging bodies specifically, chronic social isolation triggers a persistent low-grade inflammatory state that researchers call inflammaging, the slow, silent inflammatory process that underlies heart disease, cancer, cognitive decline, and virtually every major age-related illness. When you have strong social bonds, your body produces higher levels of oxytocin, which actively suppresses inflammatory pathways. Harvard's landmark 80-year study on adult development, the longest-running study of its kind in history, found that the quality of relationships in midlife and beyond was the single strongest predictor of both happiness and physical health in old age. Not cholesterol, not blood pressure, relationships. I had a patient named Robert, 78 years old, from a small town outside of Nashville. He had lost his wife of 51 years and gradually retreated from the world. Within 18 months, his blood pressure had climbed, his memory had begun to slip, and he had lost nearly 20 pounds of muscle mass. We connected him with a community choir and a weekly card group at his local senior center. 1 year later, his cardiologist reduced his blood pressure medication by half, and his cognitive scores had measurably improved. Robert told me, "Doc, I forgot what it felt like to matter to people." If you have people in your life who know you, love you, and depend on you, guard those relationships like the medicine they truly are. Now, if you are finding this content valuable, and I hope you are, I want to take just a moment to ask you to hit that subscribe button if you have not already done so, and tap the like button below this video. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it helps this channel reach other seniors who need to hear this information. There are people out there right now sitting alone, believing that the best years are behind them, and your simple click on that button helps us reach them. Thank you. Now let's get into the top 4, because this is where things get really extraordinary. Number 4 is the ability to remember and retrieve names, words, and recent events without significant delay or frustration. Cognitive agility, the brain's ability to access stored information quickly and accurately, is one of the most telling indicators of neurological health in older adults. The Alzheimer's Association estimates that by age 80, approximately 40% of adults experience some measurable degree of memory impairment. But the key word in that statistic is impairment, because normal aging does involve some slowing of processing speed. What becomes pathological is when retrieval fails systematically, especially for recent events. The science of why this happens comes down to something called synaptic pruning and myelin degradation. Think of your neural pathways like highways. Myelin is the smooth asphalt that allows signals to travel fast. After 70, that asphalt begins to crack and thin, which means signals slow down. But here is what is remarkable. The brain has a property called neuroplasticity, which means it can literally grow new pathways around the damaged ones. Research from Johns Hopkins University has shown that cognitively active adults over 70, people who read daily, learn new skills, engage in strategic games, or study a new language, show measurably thicker gray matter in the prefrontal cortex compared to their sedentary peers. Your brain can grow at 75. That is not a metaphor. That is biology. If you can still remember the name of someone you met last week, recall what you had for dinner 2 nights ago, and hold a complex conversation without losing your train of thought, you are operating with a level of cognitive vitality that puts you firmly in the rare gem category. Number 3 is the ability to rise from the floor to a standing position without using your hands or knees for support. This one I want you to try carefully. Please have someone nearby or do this near a couch for safety. This test was developed by Brazilian physician Dr. Claudio Gil Araujo and became internationally recognized after his research published in the European Journal of Cardiovascular Prevention, and rise from the floor was strongly correlated with all-cause mortality in adults between 51 and 80 years of age. In his study, each point scored on the Sit to Rise test was associated with a 21% reduction in mortality risk, 21% per point. Why is this ability so profound? Because it requires the simultaneous expression of muscular strength, flexibility, motor coordination, and body composition working together. After age 70, a process called anabolic resistance sets in, which means your muscles stop responding to protein and exercise stimulation as efficiently as they once did. Your body begins losing muscle mass at a rate of 1 to 2% per year after 60 and up to 3% per year after 75. This is called sarcopenia, and it is one of the most underdiagnosed and dangerous conditions in older adults. But the research from the University of Sao Paulo shows that targeted resistance training, even in octogenarians, people in their 80s, can reverse measurable amounts of this muscle loss within 8 to 12 weeks. I treated a woman named Dorothy, 81 years old, from Portland, Oregon. When she came to my practice, she required both hands and a piece of furniture to stand up from a chair, let alone the floor. We built a gentle progressive resistance program around bodyweight movements, chair squats, wall push-ups, step practice. After 14 weeks, Dorothy got up from the floor using only one hand. She cried in my office that day. She said she had not done that since her late 60s. If you can rise from the floor with minimal or no hand support today, please understand what a remarkable thing that is. Number 2 is the ability to maintain a resting heart rate below 65 beats per minute alongside a blood pressure consistently below 130/80. This combination, what I call the cardiovascular vitality signature, represents the gold standard of heart health in older adults, and it is rarer than most people realize. According to the American Heart Association, more than 70% of adults over 65 have hypertension, blood pressure consistently elevated above healthy thresholds. And a resting heart rate above 80 beats per minute in older adults has been independently associated with a 32% increased risk of cardiovascular mortality in research from the Copenhagen City Heart Study. Here is why these numbers matter so deeply for an aging body. Think of your cardiovascular system like a garden irrigation network. The heart is the pump, the arteries are the pipes, and your organs are the garden beds that need water. When your blood pressure is chronically high, it is like the water pressure in those pipes is always too intense. Over time, the pipes stiffen, develop weak spots, and sometimes burst. When your resting heart rate is low, it means your heart is pumping efficiently, using fewer beats to move the same volume of blood, which is the hallmark of a strong, well-conditioned cardiac muscle. The extraordinary news is that aerobic exercise, Mediterranean-style dietary patterns rich in omega-3 fatty acids and polyphenols, and consistent stress reduction practices including meditation, which research from Massachusetts General Hospital shows can reduce systolic blood pressure by an average of 5 millimeters of mercury after 8 weeks of regular practice, all measurably improve these numbers, even in people in their late 70s and early 80s. If your resting heart rate is below 65 and your blood pressure is well controlled without a cascade of medications, your cardiovascular system is functioning at an elite level for your age group. And now number 1, the single most powerful predictor of healthy aging that I have encountered in 30 years of clinical medicine, and the one that most doctors never talk about in these terms. Number 1 is the ability to maintain your sense of purpose, a clear, emotionally compelling reason to get out of bed every single morning. I know what you might be thinking, Dr. kenD Berry, that is not medical, that is philosophy. But I urge you to hear me out because the biology of purpose is one of the most robust areas of longevity research in the world today. A study from Rush University Medical Center in Chicago followed over 1,000 older adults over a period of 7 years and found that those who scored highest on what researchers called purpose in life scales had a 2.4 times lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, a 43% lower risk of stroke, and lived an average of 7 years longer than their low-purpose counterparts. 7 years from a sense of meaning. The biological mechanism works through the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is your body's central stress regulation system. When you wake up with purpose, your cortisol levels follow a healthy arc, rising appropriately in the morning to give you energy and falling steadily through the day. When you lack purpose, that system becomes dysregulated and you end up with chronically elevated cortisol, which drives inflammation, destroys muscle tissue, impairs immune function, and accelerates cognitive decline. Purpose is not just emotionally sustaining, it is physiologically protective. The Blue Zones research conducted by National Geographic explorer Dan Buettner across the world's longest-lived populations in Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Loma Linda, California, Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Ikaria, Greece, found that every single one of those populations had a cultural concept of purpose embedded into their daily lives. In Okinawa, they call it ikigai. In Nicoya, they call it plan de vida. In every case, it translates to the same idea, a reason to rise. I want to tell you about one more patient. His name was Edward. He was 77 years old, a retired school teacher from Columbus, Ohio. After he retired, Edward told me he felt like he had become invisible, like the world had simply moved on without him. His health deteriorated rapidly over 2 years. His inflammation markers climbed. His testosterone dropped to the bottom of the normal range. He was sleeping 12 hours a day and still exhausted. We talked at length about what had once mattered most to him. He had spent 31 years teaching 8th grade science. He missed young minds. We found him a volunteer tutoring program at a local middle school, and he started going in 2 days a week. Within 6 months, Edward's inflammatory markers had dropped measurably. His sleep normalized. He had started walking again, and there was something in his eyes, a light that had not been there when I first met him. He told me the children called him Mr. E, and that they fought over who got to sit next to him. That, I will tell you, is medicine that no pharmaceutical company can manufacture. If you wake up every morning knowing why your day matters, if there are people counting on you, projects calling your name, passions pulling you forward, or even a garden that needs tending and a neighbor who counts on your smile, you are carrying the single most powerful longevity medicine in existence, and it is entirely within you. So let me bring this full circle. We live in a culture that has decided quietly and without asking your permission that the decades after 70 are a time of retreat, a time of managing decline, a time of accepting less. And I am here today with decades of clinical experience and an enormous body of research behind me to tell you that is simply not true. The people I have described today, those walk with strength, sleep with depth, balance with confidence, connect with love, think with clarity, rise with power, beat with a steady heart, and wake with purpose, those people exist. They are real. And the pathway to that version of aging is not closed to you. It is never too late. The research is not ambiguous on this point. Adults who begin aerobic exercise in their 70s show measurable cardiovascular improvement within 8 weeks. Adults who begin resistance training in their 80s gain muscle. Adults who find new social connections in their mid-70s show improved cognitive scores within a year. Your biology is not done responding to the choices you make today. Not even close. What you have heard in this video is not wishful thinking. The scientific references supporting everything I have shared are linked in the description below, and I encourage you to explore them. Share this video with someone you love who needs to hear it. A parent, a spouse, a friend who has started to believe that the best is behind them. Because it is not if they choose differently starting today. If you found value in what we discussed today, please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video, and tap the like button. It truly helps us reach more people who need this information. And now I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these 8 abilities are you strongest in right now, and which one are you going to work on first. I read every single comment, and I will personally respond to as many as I can. Because you matter, your health matters, and the years ahead of you still have the potential to be the most meaningful of your life. I will see you in the next video.